Hello guys! Welcome back to Not Just Mecha! It's Marco here, and today I have a long-awaited and well-deserved treat for all the wargamers out there. How to paint in an enhanced Games Workshop box art style with the least effort and in the shortest time possible. Episode 2! Sorry for the wait. I needed some time to properly launch the Twitch channel that from now on will run in parallel with YouTube regular scheduled programming and with its own dedicated projects to offer you a healthy mix of scripted and concise and live and chatty. With all the Leviathan craziness of the early summer, an incredible model flew under the radars of the community. And I'm here to do it the justice it deserves. First, there was Frazetta's Death Dealer. Then we had the old school Nargol Lord on horse. Frankly, the only possible way to improve the Death Dealer is to make him a Papa Nargol devotee. And to complete the circle, now we have the Harbinger of Decay. That, even more shamelessly than its past incarnation, said in a loving, absolutely good way, has gone back to the source with this perfect, ominous side pose and the classic triangular Frazetta's composition. Speed and efficiency are the keywords of this project, to show you that knowing how to manage the most essential visual elements that make an effective paint job, you can field crazy looking heroes with an investment of time and effort, not much superior to the standard troopers. But loving this model so much, I would really like to paint it again in a display/competition level to show you how much in common they will have in their final look. My to-do list for the channel has officially a new entry. I prime everything with an aggressive coat of black, to uniform all the different basic materials under a solid shell of paint. I don't really need black as a quote-unquote color for my first layer of paint, but black makes it easy to see unpainted spots and uneven patches, and I kind of like having 2 layers of priming on gaming models. You know, just in case. The real chromatic climb starts from a custom mix of orangey reddish-brown and violet. I want to establish a warm red undertone, on top of which all the green tones I'm going to use can develop a solid complementary contrast. But I also want it a bit more desaturated and darker, to make the final look more grounded and better push the contrast of value and saturation/vibrancy. So violet, with its blue contribute, makes all this work for me with just a few drops into the mix. I didn't keep any black, not even in the deepest recesses, because I want cool, more interesting colors everywhere, even in the lowest and most hidden angles. The model is big, it's a central character, and in this process the underpainting is my heavy lifter. So, to get a perfectly smooth box art finish and a super gentle, progressive flow of tones without hard steps, my chromatic and value climb from shadows to lights is going to be a slow, gradual escalation. So, the first thing to do is to come out from the violet-red slice of the color wheel and move to still slightly desaturated, but properly orangey earth tones. From this point, I can gently move to the yellow spectrum, as the most natural evolution of the previous layer. And from here, easily step a little into the lighter, conclusive peaks of green. always desaturated, and made lighter with the addition of a good amount of a basic, pale Caucasian skin tone, that, naturally containing all the primaries, and of course white, is a great desaturating agent, but still able to deliver, and in a mix, retain a good amount of color compared to pure white. I quickly established these tones and macro values with fairly opaque paint, that, even if used in a very progressive way, can leave some rough transitions here and there. If you think that an airbrush will do all the work for you, well, think twice. The tool is less forgiving and automatic than what you imagine. So, since a key part of this concept is establishing a real-life heavy metal smoothness, I go back into the shadows, using transparent tones as final blending agents. If you have ever seen officially painted GW models in person, you know that they are not as smooth and polished as in the pictures. But if you add a couple of steps like these ones to your workflow, you can easily get that expected feel in real life. And this working both with brush and airbrush. Okay, in words this seems like a ton of work, but only because this step is the most conceptually complex. And at the painting table, it's only been like half an hour of really easy work. What I have here is a mood setting / environmental lights and shadows flow, going from the warm but colder and lighter hues of the upper parts to the warmer and darker tones of the shadows. We are used to establish this stuff after the local colors of outfit and equipment, layering or filtering this information on top. But I think it's way more efficient to work as an oil painter, with an imprimatura take on the preliminary work, and then structure the local tones on the foundation of the scene, to make the storytelling more interesting, clear, and powerful. I start the second stage of the work, setting in place one of the strongest eye-catching elements of the scene, so I can adjust and relate all the rest to the central role of the metallic armor. If you want to always have the perfect metallic tone for every possible project and crazy idea, the ultimate solution is to mix your own. I don't mind a bit of opacity here, because this armor has to read as something different. So I don't push the mix to the extremes of transparency of my metallic contrast mix, but the fluidity of Vallejo Duraluminium and the extra watery medium still help giving to the mix the ability to fuse a bit with the base. And on top of everything, make it flow and stain in a single quick pass, like a dream. This step is definitely the most fun and enjoyable, especially on a model with all these natural, flowy, and interconnected organic materials. The best explanation for what's happening here is that I'm using GW contrast and inks like watercolors. Put these relatively transparent, highly saturated paints on the wet palette. Add a bunch of water to increase their translucency, and a bit of medium to get a flow easier to control and spread uniformly. And you get a crazily versatile tool, able to push quick, super forgiving and super fun wet-on-wet applications to new, incredible heights. Because of the amount of water involved, you don't have to hurry. And because you're working with translucent overlaps and not masses of color, you don't have to worry about the build-up of paint and its thickness. Every shade of the local tones of the materials automatically integrate with the underpainting and the mood of the piece in their most natural results, because even if it's happening in reverse, their relation is the same of what happens in real life, where light and its tone and temperature envelop in quote-unquote transparency the objects. So you don't have to overthink the mixology of the tones, especially if you are going for a grounded, more natural feel like here in my case. And the work still being super fast because of the intrinsic staining power of inks and contrast, thanks to the controlled dilution, is very forgiving and easy to predict and balance, because the single pass doesn't have any definitive covering power. Again, watercoloring is the best label you can give to this take. With a few basic colors in place, I have the confidence to establish the remaining, more neutral and less central metallic tones, using again a mix of neutral silvers and inks to introduce custom tones. The two silver paints from different brands are there for their different consistency, more fluid for larger or more intricate parts, and a thicker one for small, precise details. And yes, even metallics can be used with the same watercolor wet-on-wet approach to obtain super smooth foundational shades and color shifting effects. Then, back again to the non-metallic tones to complete the lively and modulated color blocking. Man, this is so relaxing. To maximize every possible kind of contrast, I hit only the decaying ores with a quick oil wash. It's a subtle thing impossible to deliver through the lens of the camera, but in person it adds a slightly different, more satin finish, able to create a new layer of separation between horse and rider. As you can see, I'm not looking for the classic, sharp, dark definition with a high-density wash that sits and remains into lines and details, but aiming for that jump of finish. I'm introducing more inflammatory shades and the free, organic artifacts that oils over acrylics naturally create. The main advantage of using oils for subtle, transparent tones in this context comes from their being super forgiving on larger and more flat surfaces. They are even more playable than the watercolor trick. And of course, I can blend, clean or erase parts I don't like with the touch of a brush or a Q-tip. The last stage happens all on the wet palette, with a bunch of bold, saturated starting tones and super opaque paint, because the focus is all on textures disguised as higher midtones and highlights, or lights in the form of textures. The concept works pretty well in both directions. The idea is simple but powerful, and extremely well suited for the needs of speedy, efficient painting. To put it simple, in real life, when there is no or not enough light, you obviously cannot see details. And something similar happens when there is too much light, and particulars are swallowed by powerful or even blinding reflections. So the perception of small, granular elements and textures happens all in the easy-to-perceive mid-values of the midtones, and we can simply translate that into painting. The process until this point is built around the idea that shadows and lower midtones don't really need much more than a value-driven impression of their tones. And the extreme highlights are always simple, quite blocky entities, quick to establish. Think about the solid GW edge highlights. So I focus most of my efforts literally in the middle. Of course, in display painting, things cannot be this simple and stereotyped. But for gaming, and on top of the overlapped exponential complexity of this underpainting and fluid tonal work, this idea can cut a crazy amount of time, still delivering a crazily good-looking result. The thing that you need to master here is your brushstrokes game. Without overthinking, make them quick and loose. Especially in the initial touches, when you're breaking the total smoothness of the previous stages. The more abstract you go, and more unrelated to the actual object you are painting, the better. Because you are able to naturally introduce the painterly feel, lacking from the perfect surface you are starting with. Then you become more precise, and let's say referential, in the latest stages of refinement. On a model like this one, there isn't really a limit on how much you are able to push, adding details and interesting micro brushstrokes. But from a purely technical point of view, at this point you have all the bits legally needed to call it done. And the timing mostly depends on how much fun you are having with the process. And here is the final result. I closed around 5 hours of work, spent on a quick burst in the first stage, and the remaining more evenly distributed between the transparency and the opacity steps. Reaching the box art level of detailing is a relatively quick thing to do, because the GW style is very essential on internal texturing and painted particulars. So if you are aiming to that cleaner look, with this from dark to light approach, you'll be able to get to the point in a super quick and very relaxed painting session. And on the other side, if you want to render things in a richer and deeper way, you just need to keep slapping paint around to your heart's content. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. Remember that you can ask me anything down below with a comment, you can follow my projects during the week using one of my socials, or watch me painting live on Twitch. Check the schedule of the streams on the Twitch homepage. And if you want to support my work, check my Patreon page and join the community, or maybe ask for a commission. See you next week, guys!